Hello and welcome. Today is Sunday. It is the final day of letting the Lord rest before he goes to rise tomorrow, as far as it being that time of crucifixion. People usually say he died on Friday and he rose on Sunday, but let's not beat around the bush. You can't die one day and say that's not zero, but that's one day. Go one other day where you're still resting and then say you were up the third day. 1 and 3 with 2 in the middle being one day does not make sense. Now, if you notice a 3 is a 4 or 3 is a 5, then you'll notice Friday the day he died, it was the first day 0. Next day 1, Saturday. Next day 2, Sunday. Next day 3, Monday. He arose Monday. From Friday being 0 to Monday being 3, he rested for 3 days. Now, I know this is a crackhead thing to say, but I'm breaking up marijuana. Methamphetamine and certain drugs like that only last in your system for 3 days. Something so deadly and chemical and bad stays in your system for 3 days, and then it sweats out, you know? Isn't that a trip where you're like, what's the combustion curriculum and formula for that displayed episode of those two contras, you know? So you think about things like that as long as you're thinking about numbers and other things, you know? Another thing, why does Jesus and Satan have the same initial type of signature? They're like, what do you mean? He didn't have a signature. He didn't even write this and that. Well, who wrote the Bible? You see, people will say that God wrote the Bible. People will say Jesus wrote the Bible. People will say it was a poet in the 900s after death. People will say it was all the apostles, all the prophets, all the disciples. There will be people that wrote in the Bible. They say that it was 40 scholars from all different religions and all different walks of life that wrote the Bible. You got a lot of help with the Bible. Let's just say that much. The one thing I could say that I happen to deal with, like Jesus, I know it wasn't no regular stigmata. Let me take a hit of this real quick. Now, SD being Solar Dragon or Snapdragon as it's called, you know, they have these little loopy-loop type of fundamental festival type events where they like to broadcast it, show it, act like it's like their event, but like Solar Dragon happens to be with the 12 years of Chinese Zodiac. So why would me and Jesus have so much in common? We're like, what the fuck? Somebody played a trick on you? Oh, this ain't real. This ain't possible. Remember, spells are very important. So if you're saying, I can't believe this, most likely in like 5 minutes or so, give or take, you're going to forget everything you just figured out. You're going to be like, are you serious? Let's calm down the intensity, because intensity is where something of acceleration and friction, like a miracle, can take place. This is where you have to really not trick yourself, because that's the only time when the mind becomes your enemy, and your enemy is able to mess with you at the most vulnerable time. So at the same time, you're like, I can't believe this. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, I like the Knicks. The Knicks, yeah, this and that. And you're like, no, we weren't talking about that. Stay on point. Stay on point, stay center, aim small, miss small. There's a lot of credibility right there when it comes to knowing how to be center and be focused. This type of stuff you can't really learn anywhere unless it's your own learning, your own rediscovering. I have a gift where I'm able to explain the rediscovering as if it was taking place rather than rediscover after you got to listen and really hear what I had to say. So, am I some ugly brown Mexican dude or whatever they say? Well, one, I'm not Mexican because I wasn't born in Mexico, so it's a nationality. Two, I don't contribute or cater to that nationality as far as calling it more than a nationality. It's not a race. Okay, being Polish or German is not a race. It's still a nationality, but it's so old that it's common to use in a spectrum of today's period. The gap, the time space. Time and space, duration. How long have they been there? Way longer than Mexico is called Mexico. And yeah, they all been here way longer than us as far as us being the original people. See, when you have original people and they're native and they listen to like the wolf howl and the wind blow and the sun rise and set, as well as the crazy phenomena with the stars and the shooting stars, great spirit, you end up having a lot of people try to hijack and take our shit for a long time and make sure that we're not able to recover or remember any of the importance. But when you stay close to the spirit world, when you're able to stay close to, that guardian, when you're able to pay attention to things like Satan and Jesus having the same S with a line above, like two little lines, and one half moon or crescent moon is like facing up, kind of like the bull horns. So when you're able to cross reference and pay attention to ancient symbols as well as be a descendant of code talker, um, you end up realizing how you're a natural decipher and cipher. So who was the natural ciphers and deciphers? Sacagawea, Pocahontas. You fucking make you make your statement on who. It was always the native. Then when they wanted to do stuff with science, and I know it sounds crazy, but we're talking about when you met the first Indians and they had all the wise wisdom and magic, and then those that copied, and when they got to the future and they actually were able to bridge all that science that we had with the spirit world, they went back in time and they created this thing called Genesis, where it just kept repeating, repeating, repeating. So just like when you are, threading something or, getting a net from being in the water and you're just getting that whole rotator spin on both sides of that freaking notch wheel and you're just having it roll in, that becomes a Genesis. So where did the word Genesis come from? Who created it? Those that originally did not give the Native Americans their credit. How do I know this stuff? Well, my life has been anything but normal. I could tell you about the events that got me here and the events that have saved my life, which also got me here. Also, the events that everybody thinks, oh, he's nasty. Oh, he's embarrassing. Oh, I can't believe he did that in his life. That stuff already marked out on the spirit world where everyone's like, ha ha ha, like laughing at me. I'm like, now that I see this whole part of submit and worship or like be humbled by being embarrassed and ashamed, that's when you submit. Like you have to be able to feel that pain as well as give it back to somebody so they can know that it's not their pain but it's your pain, and you are that humble. You worship the Lord. You say you'll do anything for him. I am one of the only ones at this time of this life who has proven it to that depth. You felt sorry for someone that catfished you. You actually did something you didn't want to do. And it's all because somebody was begging, crying, please. And you're just like, fuck. I mean, I've gone scratching people's backs left and right. Waking up one time when I was trying to just smoke dope at someone's house, whoever it was, like, cool to, smoke and watch a dirty movie, but not touch around because we don't, like, find each other attractive. Like, I've gone through things where That's enough said. And you wake up and you're like, oh no, like you should have just started swinging. But when you fall asleep because you're just out there trying to get that adrenaline rush, whatever, that type of stuff is sad. Then years later, when all the cuckoo stuff adds on, as far as messing with you, it's not your subconscious that brought it back. It wasn't anything of a mental illness, breakdown from a trauma, anything that was obstructing something within that genesis. Because not only in that genesis do you have out there, where it's like, you're tugging on the rope on those rotating wheels to just keep coming back around, but you're also dealing with the genesis effect of those properties being damaged and reassembled in your mind. So when you have that whole part of a system breakdown and you're trying to reassemble it and it's spinning through memories that are that chemically potent in the vessel to make you kind of like relive it, sometimes that's terrible, but that's not the case. That was the case in the beginning when it was a certain type of demonic presence that kept trying to throw that at me. They felt it, they smelt it, they kept throwing it at me. And I was just like, nah, how do all these people on the streets know my whole life story and they're laughing at me or they're saying I'm sick? I'm like, I'm gonna stay this one in. And I stayed in, I didn't go cry, I didn't go run away, I didn't commit suicide or try to. I was there on the streets and it was just like something you wouldn't ever believe as far as hearing a holy war, demons fighting angels, and people on the streets where it's like everyone looks at you, they're ready to talk about you. Like their memory serves up for them to be able to know everything clear about you. Like if they lived your life, like if they saw you third person view, like if there's just somehow a camera in a room and there's no camera in there. You know? That right there is the weird, crazy shit I had to get rid of, not only in myself, but around me on the streets. And only when that thing was able to hide in little spots, like a name, like a spirit, like a containment, like a amulet, like a medallion, like a ring, whatever its source of power where it was able to conduct a headquarters. Believe me, a headquarters can be a micro nano size. Now you're talking about demonic and witchcraft heresy, along with science, technology, and systematic performance. The software and hardware of a universe is not like a computer, but it is very, very, very touchy, very, very sensitive. The networks, they tangle easy. So you have to know how to bypass entanglements, set up traps, um, booby traps, however, because you're in a deal with everything if I haven't already fixed it, or if I fixed it once and it came back to one of your memories and it's your turn to be like guardian slash archangel, you know? Because for me, how I look, you probably think, oh, he's just some fat guy, whatever. But the whole part of like already being center, you already took out that enemy, the one that was about to freaking attack you, You have to know how to be center. These type of things I don't have to worry about in America for say. Like you're not gonna see me turn on my phone last minute or have it recording and have a bunch of guys just out of nowhere come and grab me. But in a different timeline, as far as dealing with Genesis, that happened. In a different time with Genesis before, that happened, and I had to fix it, and I had to figure out why. Then all of those things that I talked about, from being grabbed and killed to laughed at, looked at, and people just not wanting me around, to freaking being a superhero and them saying I wrote a book and I never wrote a book or wrote many books or I'm homeless now and I had like the good life and then I threw it all away. No, I actually lived a normal-ish life, not remembering the beginning years of growing up, like the traumas, my sister being possessed and doing something sexually to me. Like she somehow had to live with the memory, but when you look at the damage, you know, psychology, blah, 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 you know, you start to evaluate, and you'll see where certain deities or programs, with doing a Genesis all over again, over and over, like on a spinning wheel, it just keeps going in a circle. You end up being able to have scientists look at it like, okay, let's engage this, let's disengage that, let's assemble that, let's disable this and assemble that. And next thing you know, you're put through a circus wheel. You're put through something where it's experimental for not only just one life, but thousands of lives. As far as you living the same life over and over, or the same 5 lives over and over, you know? Are you going to be reincarnated as far as your spirit moving on to a different race, a different gender, a different place for your nationality or where you live? Or are you going to just constantly pass on, wait, and then go to the next one when you're back to living the same life again? Like a butterfly effect. And let me tell you, butterfly effect is very important to understand a neutron and a nucleus. So when you think that I'm not smart or I'm making up crazy shit, cheers to those that are laughing at you. No, my friends, it's real. It is very real. And this type of science that I tell you, they wouldn't make any movie called Cowboy in the Cupboard, Pollock in the Cupboard, Russian in the Cupboard. I mean, you have to look at how many things are systematically fair just to see what is odd and even. What is a con? What is a pro? You know? So when you're looking at those, you're like, this guy is on fire. There's nothing that he said that is a con. He's not trying to copy anybody's bullshit. He is coming out legit. Then you look at the pro side, same exact thing. So when you're able to meet in the boundary lines of just being even and complete, you're able to get from a neutral to a positive and a negative to a supernatural. But things have to be even and complete. So with that being said, do I know God? Do I know Jesus? Well, parallel lines tell me the equator and the parallel lines of two, being from Jerusalem to San Diego, tells me the story is identical. So that's one thing that people haven't been able to figure out. They're like, huh? What if I told you the equator line technically was more like the North and South Pole line? Well, you got to wonder, how did Alaska freeze as far as getting that cold for people to walk over it? Remember how thick the ice needs to be, layers, all as one huge glacier being in the ground. So you got to know a lot about meteorology. You got to know a lot about geography. I've already said that geometry. You got to know a lot about and anthropology and anatomy. And I know a lot about these things. Globally, I have figured out, North America, North Star, uh, North America and Earth, being the rising star, the one that's like, they did a lot of shit to. You know what I mean? This Earth compared to all the Genesis Earths. It's like it's not the mother planet, so therefore they can't be messed with, but it's this one, and they keep digging. And they keep trying to figure out what's going on with this little North Star. But you can't mess with little Lucifer being a planet that you live on. You get what I'm saying? So when you know that there is Michael, who was, God and Goddess in the sun, being like their heaven, and they made all of the light bright, as far as being able to reach to the earth, you'll know these type of things. Last year we had 3 eclipses: black eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, red, black, white. We had 3 popes: red, black, white. When you look at the dark matter, red matter, and then you got lunar babies like witches, magic. You got these 3 powers of trifecta. And so I'm just letting people know, why was it this earth? Why is it this one that I came back to? Why did I remember it? Why is there a mission that was at hand? Why wasn't this place kind of like an archangel uh, boot camp as far as getting people back on track and having to relive the courses that I lived? Well, because we still had a flaw in the system. So being able to record this and add this to like YouTube or something and not having any views, I know it's only this earth that says it has no views, but I know it's all the rest of the earth that surround this earth that are the ones that got the views. That also has something to do with spirit world being so big. It's spirit freaking lava bed. It's freaking spirit freaking water park. You know, it's so big. And so with this part just being in the dark, being like a tiny little Indian in the cupboard, you need to know, who Jesus is. My father Richard, he likes to say Jess. We're near the border. But when you put JES instead of YES, everybody knows that whole trick, right? How do you spell eyes? Or how do you spell yes? And then you tell them to spell eyes. And they're right there saying yes, yes. Well, that's how smart I am to put these type of tests together and show the dynamic, fuel, the whole build, this combustion, this machine that is not my brain or me, but it's just the way that I am able to chop it down for people to understand. You know, my dialect, my uh, literature, my language, my pronunciation, it all depends on who's listening and they get the message. So even if you had a translator, we're like, yeah, you know, or even if you're just in a different language, you know, you're like, huh? It's like, oh, we get it. So yeah, where does the name Victorio come from? Well, there's a lot of properties for people using Victory for passwords and access codes and all of that. But it's also put in so many ciphers, different things like that, you know? When you look at everybody's patterns as far as being like the knives, kilts, or their squiggles and all that stuff, you'll see how it's like multi-universe, and you'll see how it's like, dang, even though they're all even, that's a big tangle up, you know. And when you're looking at the tangle ups, you're not just looking at an atom or a nucleus on the outside. You're also looking at the circle in which everything's tangled up in there, creating a big boom. So you have to think about how many times I've had to deal with trying to save this space and time, whether it was this quantum place, which is like an enchantment spell. Once they introduced a science that was called quantum physics, that's where it's like it contaminated everyone. I know that sounds weird to people because they don't understand the magic. They need to see like a property of like a purple blanket just smother somebody and then absorb it and make them kind of like hollow in order to be like, this spell's real. But we know that telling yourself not to believe in something is one way of magic doing its job, whether you wanted it to help or not. Anyways, Jesus is victorious. Jess, where is Victorio? Jess, right where I said, U.S., United States. You know, um, just remember, United States. What does that mean? Well, if you remember that there's a part where it says under God, and you also look at the S, that's the seagull, Sigil, and it's for Jesus. And you're like, why does Jesus have an S? Well, you know how they try to say Satan was his enemy. in Aramaic, Satan is God's uh, like best friend, you know. So with those two being a five up, five down, boom, created part of a prophecy, part of a experiment. As the wheel kept spinning, we kept started adding this and that, and it had to constantly be done in each format. You're like, what? So there's other Earths where they're tricked to think that Jesus and Satan were not the same person, and they go against each other. You're like, yes, Bizarro and Superman. I'm sorry, you know, it wasn't Joker and Batman. It was obviously Bizarro and Superman. You get what I'm saying? A chemical flunky disaster. So, again, does United States and other places know how to cover their tracks well? No. But the one that people prayed to as far as Jesus, or the one that they didn't like as far as Satan, are both right here as far as the two that is one, the one that is all. And it's this Indian in the cupboard. So 2025 plus, 20 or 33 years or 32 years of Jesus. And don't forget the 13, so Earth with two patterns of a frequency of 666 and 666 equaling 1332 or 963, and on the other side 369, megahertz and frequency and all that. Well, you know that this guy wouldn't be telling anybody that he's anything more than a great scientist that served Jesus if he wasn't Jesus. But people don't believe me, and sooner or later this story will get out, not only to everyone outside of us, but right here center. My point.